Okay, let's get started. Hi everyone. I want to welcome you to tonight's Gardening with Native Plants workshop. Thanks so much for joining us on this beautiful evening. My name is Megan Festuca, and I am an environmental specialist with the town of North Hempstead, and I work on sustainability projects, including the creation of native plant gardens in the town's parks. Before we start, I just want to remind you that you have been muted. So if you have any questions during the presentation, you can type them into the chat box at any time, and then we will pause at different intervals to answer them. And as you probably heard, we will be recording this workshop and we're going to be posting it to the town sustainability page. So you can go back and watch it or share it with anyone who may have missed it. So now we will get to our tonight's program. I am pleased to introduce Rusty Schmidt, who is a landscape ecologist for the environmental consulting firm Nelson Pope and Voorhees, and is also the president of the Long Island Native Plant Initiative. He works on a multitude of projects involving the creation of rain gardens and native plantings on Long Island. And he is very passionate about his work and has been a great resource for me in my work for the town, as well as with planting native plants in my own home landscape. So thank you so much, Rusty, for being with us tonight. And you can share your screen and start whenever you're ready.
Hey, I can do that. I can start right away then.
Thank you.
I like it. I like it. Okay. So first things first, thank you for the introduction, Megan. Yes, and as questions come along, go ahead and type it in. What we're going to do is I'm going to, unlike in a live session where you can see people asking questions, what we're going to do is just stop every once in a while and see if there's any questions in the chat box. So let them flow as you think about them. Just a trick that I do is I have a couple slides later on that has like native nurseries. It's about halfway through, and some other cool information. So what I've done is take a picture with my phone so that I have that little piece of information later, and it's in my phone so I can find it to go to wherever I'm trying to get to. So it's a little trick that I do if you're interested, no problem, or go back to the recording. Okay, so first things first, why natives? Why are we talking about native plants? And most people think it's because of the birds and the butterflies, and that's very true, and we'll get to that in a minute. But there's other things that most people don't think about. And the first one that I like to show off is that this is the plant communities of the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. So I'm from Minneapolis. I am from Minnesota. This is a Minnesota accent. And unlike here, we actually did a survey across the landscape before we had pioneers developing in Minnesota. And so from the Louisiana Purchase and Lewis and Clark, we then went out after we realized that we have a lot more land to deal with. They sent out surveyors. And then a gentleman named Marshner took the survey notes in about 1960 or 1970s and transposed those to really determine what was on the landscape. So here's the interesting bit. Right here is Minneapolis. This is St. Paul. This is the 7-county metro area of the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. The dark green is the big woods, which are maple basswood forests. They were Little House in the Big Woods. The light yellows are the prairie areas, and you can see they're a little more further south. This is Little House on the Prairie. What's interesting is this 7-county metro area for Minneapolis and St. Paul holds about the same number of people as Long Island, Nassau and Suffolk County, and is about the same square mileage. So it's kind of very, very similar. And what's interesting is this is what's left. We developed there just as much as we have developed here on Long Island. And so the purple areas are all that's left of those native forests and prairies in the Midwest. Here on Long Island, there's a couple, what's interesting and so what I was trying to get to that point is that we've done it in other places too. It's not just here in Long Island. And so what here on Long Island, especially on this north shore where we are of Nassau County, we're dominated tree species, including tulip, black and red oak, beech, black birch, and red maple. Understories are viburnums and dogwoods, sweet gums and pin oaks. So you can kind of see what we have for generally what we would have found here along the North Shore. And what's interesting is that this is an older map, but originally in the Hempstead area, this area here was the Hempstead Plains. It's the furthest eastern prairie in the United States. It was 50 square miles. You can go see some of it still. There's 13 acres left at the Hempstead Plains Preserve, which is over by Hofstra University and Nassau County Community College. And so that, and it's pretty unique. You get to see what that would have looked like. And that was instrumental for most of Nassau County. So Nassau County especially was mainly this either this Hempstead Plain or the North Shore, as I just said, the tulip oak forest, or coastal dunes, which is the South Shore out towards Jones Beach. As you go further east, you can see that it transitions to an oak brushland, and then most of the eastern end was a pitch pine oak forest. These are what's left of those remnant places here on Long Island, similar to that purple picture a little bit ago. These are yellow, and you can see that this little dot right there is the Hempstead Plains. And you notice that most of them are associated with parks that have been protected and preserved. So you can see Jones Beach or Fire Island on the South Shore. You can see Comset State Park up on the North Shore, or things like that. So you can kind of see those are the areas that have been protected and preserved. There's a nice large area of pitch pine oak forest in the middle. So why that's important is these plants were found here originally. They were here first. They're used to our cool, cold winters, our warm, humid summers, the big storms, the wet springs, the wet falls, and they were found here on our soils with our climate, and really are adapted for Long Island. And so because of that, they are actually better associated and better adapted to the structures that we still have for soil, water, wind, and precipitation. And so that it gives them this opportunity to grow here. So it's really important that these plants will likely not need any extras. So if you plant with a native planting, you're not going to add additives of water, fertilizer, or things like that. So the other big issue with native plants is that they have deeper roots. So lawn grass has roots only a couple inches, and you know that because you've picked it out and had to replace it at some point, and it's very shallow, and they only have a couple inches. Where our native plants, and especially our prairie plants or our shrubs, have roots that can go into multiple feet deep. So this is a native oak grass that I broke it at a foot, and it went another 2 feet in this picture. Our prairie plants are really deep-rooted plants. So those plants that you find in the Hempstead Plains. So for instance, what you might find is this big blue stem has roots that can go down to about 8 feet. A little blue stem can go down to about 6 feet. Some of these plants can go down even further. So this is lead plant. Lead plant has roots that go down to 15 feet. Lead plant is about a short shrub. It's about 2 shrub perennial. It's about 2 feet tall. It has kind of silvery leaves, and its flowers are a dark purple in about June time, and it's absolutely a stunning plant. In fact, if you've been onto the High Line in New York City, you've seen it and been there in June. It's a very common plant blooming. They have it in many areas, and so you can see that these roots can go very deep. Why that's important? And I even have purple coneflower in here. So purple coneflower has roots that go down about 6 feet. So why this is important? All plants, whether it's your perennial plants, your herb in the kitchen window, the tomatoes in the garden, whatever, all plants, they slough off a third of their roots annually. They stop growing 1/3 of their roots and put down new roots looking for new nutrients and new water. That old root decomposes or decays and leaves a hole in the soil. So what happens with that is when they find when water finds these holes, they go down those tubes like a straw into the soil column. So the deeper those roots go, the more likely that water soaks deeper into the ground. And so, for instance, lawn grass, it doesn't matter if we're on Long Island Sound sand or Huntington clay, when it rains an inch on that soil, on that grass, only 1/4 of an inch of that rain event will actually soak in the ground, because the roots fill those holes, those root channels fill up with water and just doesn't take the water in fast enough, and the rest of the water runs off the landscape. Where our deep-rooted plants can offer opportunities to water soak deeper into the soil column. One of my favorites is a shrub called ninebark. It has roots that go 15 feet deep into the soil. And it's a beautiful shrub that we could or should be using more in our native landscapes. And if you don't quite believe me, these are some of the roots that that are on this display. This was a display that I saw a number of years ago at the National Arboretum in Washington, D.C. I went down for a spring break with my daughter, and this was the demonstration or display that they had. And you can see many of these plants are Midwestern native plants, prairie plants, but you'll notice that almost all of them are found here as well. So here's little blue stem, roots go down about 6 feet. Here's big blue stem, goes down about 8 feet. Here's Indian grass, goes down probably about 10, 12 feet. These are all plants found here, right here on Long Island. Broom sedge, another great plant found that goes down about 6, 7 feet. So these grasses and flowers can put down roots very, very deep. So I'm going to ask a question, and you can throw the answer in the chat quick. What do you think is the biggest crop in the United States in acreage? The number of acres, you know, the one that has the most acreage in the crop for crops. You can see one chat already. One person said corn. Another, there you go. Soybeans, corn, but it's actually lawn grass, turf. It is the #1 crop in the United States. There's more lawn grass in the United States by acreage than all of those other things combined. There's more lawn grass by acreage than there is corn, soybeans, wheat, cranberries, blueberries, apples, you name it. All the other crops combined do not equal the same number of acreage that lawn grass is. And lawn is a crop. We manage it, we water it, we fertilize it, we take care of it. We just don't eat it. The only thing that does seem to eat it is geese. And so it's kind of a desert out there, and we've created more and more and more of it. In fact, we have created somewhere around 8 New Jerseys of lawn grass across the United States, 62,500 square miles. And then what's really crazy is that we keep putting in another 2 million acres annually, the size of Yellowstone National Park, into the US. So we continue to convert more and more areas. And this is an alien plant. These are not plants found here. There's not many plants there's not many animals that utilize it. It's a plant that is great for picnics and a baseball game or football game, but there's not many other uses for lawn grass. It is now it's become our aesthetic. It's something that we look at and we find it very important, but it doesn't have many benefits to the environment or to us even. So today, suburbia supports very little biodiversity. And if you think about your own property for a second, and especially most Long Island homes, not all, have less than 5% or less native plants on their property. And typically it's that oak tree or that nice tree that's in the yard. Most of the plants that are found in Long Island are not native. The azaleas, the hydrangeas, the boxwoods, all those things, none of them are native to, many of them not even native to the US, much less to Long Island. And so there's many plants that we have developed into our ethos of what we should have in our suburban lawn. And new science articles that I've been reading are suggesting that because of the lack of biodiversity, because we're not having a variety of things, and especially in the animal world, that is a contributor to some of our pandemics and other health concerns to humans. And our challenge is to redesign suburbia so that it becomes a more healthy functioning ecosystem. And so we need to start thinking about how do we provide opportunities. Since we've eliminated much of the natural world around us, what can we do to put it back in a limited fashion to what we can do with what we have the ability to change? And so first off is probably your own yard and your own lawn. And so watch the pictures, it's going to change. This is a picture that's been developed of a typical, urban area with homes that are kind of close. This is definitely could be a Nassau County picture. It's not, but it could be. But I'm going to click here in a second, watch what we could do to start changing the biodiversity. We provide more opportunities for plants to be growing in between the yards, screening, rain gardens, native plantings, native plantings throughout, and really changing the diversity. I am not saying you have to have 100% native plants in your yard. What I'm suggesting is that we increase it significantly. If we can get into 50+% of your yard as native, we're going to have a better ecosystem and have more opportunities for our wildlife and for ourselves, to tell you the truth. So I'm going to do that picture again. Here it was before. Here's the growth. Okay. So I'm going to stop there for a second. Is there any questions in the chat?
So we have one question, but probably more for me than it is for you, unless you're familiar with the town's code. They asked, isn't there a town ordinance that we have to maintain 40% of our property as lawn plants? And to my knowledge, that is not true. The town doesn't have any laws that prevent you from planting whatever you want. They might have code that says that you have to put in vegetation in certain places, that you can't have impervious surfaces of more than a certain percentage, but there's nothing specifically that says that you have to have lawn. So feel free to plant native plants to your heart's content. and we definitely encourage it. But I'm going
to show a few pictures to actually show that off a bit. And then the other thing that I'd like to do is we're going to actually have a program that was developed last year to encourage people to convert lawn to native plants, and we're hoping to do that again this year, and we'll explain that in a little bit too.
Another question came in. They want to know what an alternative to lawn grass is. I'm assuming they mean a native plant that can be played on by kids.
Okay. So yes, so there are a few things that are coming along. I think I have a picture of it later, and I'll point it out again later. But my favorite in the shady areas is a sedge called Pennsylvania sedge. It can be grown. It's hard to grow from seed. That's the issue. It works better from individual plants, and it spreads out and makes a nice, a pretty good turf underneath shady areas. And here's the best part: it only grows like 3.5, 4 inches tall. It doesn't grow any taller, so you don't even have to mow it. In the sunny areas, there's a thing called path rush, Juncus tenuis, that also stays short, and you can run and play on it really rough. It's actually made for areas that are for cow, where cow paths are walking on it every day, and it's not killing it. So it's going to be better for that tough system. And then there's also a number, so those are the two more grass-like plants. There's a number of other sedges, there's a number of other rushes, and even red fescue is a native grass that is in the fescue family. It's a little tougher. It's probably the closest to a lawn grass that you're used to seeing, like over my right shoulder before you get to the natives. And that would also work. It is a native plant that can be used, but that one you're going to have to mow. The other two you won't. Other things that you can, but I will show you a whole bunch of ground covers that could be a replacement to ground covers that are not grass-like, so that you can start thinking about other things as well. But for the kids, that's probably my first three that are native. There is one more thing that's maybe more sustainable, but not native. There is a low mow grass mix that you can find. You can do a little Googling for it. The place that I tend to buy it from is called prairienursery.com. It's out of Wisconsin, and it's an 8 fescue mix of dwarf fescues that do not grow any more than 3 inches tall. You don't need to mow it, except for, that's why it's called low mow and not no mow, except for twice in about June time when the seed heads come up, and it works really well. It's not native, but it would be more reduction, and they have deeper roots, and it would have less maintenance. So I think a couple other chats came up. Was there any other questions?
So I'm not sure what this person means, but they said they have a cabin with native wild plants that are woody, scraggly, and 50 years old. And they said, will they grow back with root systems that deep? I don't know if they mean if they remove them. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
so yeah, it depends on the plants. If you're trying to, some of the scraggly, woody plants do really good by what we call coping or cutting them back. So by cutting them back, they actually reinvigorate themselves, and they come back thicker, stronger, lusher, start producing flowers and things like that. So so for instance, the sumacs only live about 10 years. If you cut them back hard, they come back thicker, lusher, and reinvigorate themselves, and they'll live another 10 years before you cut them back again. And so that's one of those plants, but it just depends on each species. Do a little, if you know what they are, do a little quick Google search and see if coping is a good way of resetting their timeline.
Great, thank you. Someone, I'm pretty sure the answer to this is yes, but someone asked, will you be providing instructions or suggestions on how to begin planting a native garden?
Yep, will do. Yep, will do. Okay.
Someone wants to know, how do we get involved with our town to promote native plants in public areas?
So if you're in the town of North Hempstead, the best person to talk to is Megan right here on the phone. If you're out of North Hempstead, believe it or not, every village or town has an ecological person that's on their staff that is helping promote these things. So for instance, in Northport, there's a group called the Northport Native Garden Initiative. In Port Washington Peninsula, there's a program called Rewild. I'll show these, by the way, later. If you're got that property far out east in the Hamptons, there's people out there. So there's somebody in your area that is not only promoting but pushing these suggestions for their towns or their villages.
Okay, they're in Old Westbury. I'm gonna put my email in the chat. So if anybody has any questions about something like that, we can discuss it later.
Okay, no problem. I'm gonna keep moving if that's all right.
Yes, let's keep going. Keep asking questions and we'll answer them at the next break or at the end whenever Rusty has time.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so moving on a little bit. So the most important animal in the world is actually insects. It's the most important group of all the animals, and the reason for it is they're the energy transfer. So our plants grow, our plants bloom, it takes in nutrients and different things and puts it out into their plant structure, and then the insects come and they eat those plants and absorb that energy that the sun has provided to the landscape. And so the bees are eating pollen, or nectar. The leaf cutting insects are eating the leaves of the plant and taking in those nutrients differently. Caterpillars, for instance, are eating that vegetation and growing and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so and then there's the next one up is, other predatory insects like spiders and wasps. They eat some of those insects and then they're eaten by birds, or sometimes the birds are eating the caterpillars directly, and it works up the food chain. And really, there is the biggest diversity of animals is the insect biome, and the most important. And people don't think about it. And so what happens is we really need to worry about these insects. I'm going to go down one path of why. One of those paths is that 96% of our terrestrial birds rear their young on insects. If you don't have insects, these birds do not have the chance to rear their young. They bring insects, mostly caterpillars, but a little of everything, at an average rate of 1 every 3 minutes. That's 6,000 caterpillars for one brood of birds. And in fact, some of these birds, like I had Carolina wrens in my box in my yard. I have a little bird box that has a green roof and the whole works. I love watching them. The Carolina wrens are going back and forth. They actually did 2 broods. They did 1 brood early, and those chicks left. And then that mom and dad came back and raised another brood in July and did it all over again. And it was so fun to watch. And so so that's 12,000 caterpillars for that one family, or that one pair of birds that were eaten. And so, and then the next piece to that is 90% of our insects have some time in their development need a plant to grow on. And in fact, we have a name for it, a host plant. So most people know about the one on the right here. This is a monarch caterpillar. It makes the monarch butterfly. And this monarch caterpillar needs to live and grow on milkweed. If you do not have milkweed, the egg will not develop. The egg will not turn into a caterpillar. The caterpillar does not turn into a butterfly. If you don't have the milkweed, you can't grow this caterpillar. The reason why the monarch is so orange is milkweed sap is actually very toxic. There's only a handful of insects that can eat it and survive it. But when they do eat it and survive it, what they tend to do is put that toxin into their bodies. And why monarchs are orange is they're saying, I'm poisonous, do not eat me. Because now they're just as poisonous as that milkweed. So that's one of them. The one on the left is the black swallowtail. Black swallowtail, it likes to eat things like golden Alexanders. That's their native food that they love. But they also will take over your parsley if you want to eat. They might eat some parsley, but that's another different plant. So they can either do something like make themselves toxic, or they can be very, very abundant, or you can hide. So the one on the left here is a green moth, emerald moth, and that moth is brown, but what it does is when it goes onto the plant, it takes little bits of the flower, ties it on its back with a little bit of silk, and hides from the plant, or hides from the birds by putting some camouflage on. The one on the upper right is an arborvitae moth. And this arborvitae caterpillar is hiding with on an arborvitae. And the one on the bottom left, right here's the caterpillar, or bottom right, sorry, bottom right, is the laurel caterpillar. It's found on laurel leaves. And the white stripe right here is the back of that caterpillar. And you can see that it's hiding very well. If you're not going to be hidden, the other way to go about this is to be very, very popular. Have lots and lots of plants, or have lots and lots of babies. So like the inchworm coming falls early in the season, falls from our trees, especially oak trees. Their host plant is the oak tree, and they need to be very, very abundant because there's, many of them are going to be eaten by the birds. Every time we plant a alien plant, a plant that's not from Long Island, it wouldn't grow here. We are reducing the local insect population. So for instance, that crepe myrtle that we all love. In fact, I have a crepe myrtle bush in my yard. I don't have the tree, but I have the bush. It's a stunning plant, but it actually has it's not a host to any of our local insects. They have developed that over millennia of that relationship between the insect and the plant. And because you have now moved that plant from another area, what happened is that the insects don't come with it. And so we do not have the ability for those insects to move as quickly. So what happens is when we reduce our percentage of native plants, we are actually reducing the insect population. And when we reduce the insect population, we actually are reducing other things down the food chain. And we have seen, Cornell University has shown that mainly because of alien plants or habitat, think about it as habitat, we're producing 30 to 35 times less caterpillars in biomass, and it is really affecting our birds. Our bird populations are lower than they've ever been. Bird populations are low for a number of reasons. One is habitat and food. The other one is, cats attacking them that are outside. There's diseases. There's a whole bunch of things going on. But the number one reason is usually food and having insects to eat. So some native species are better at producing caterpillars than others. So for instance, there's 5 years of list trees. Oak trees can produce, has the ability to host 534 different kinds of caterpillars. If you can only plant one native plant in your yard, why not an oak tree? It is got the most biodiversity that you can provide. Plus, it has acorns that a whole bunch of animals eat as well. It really has a wide variety of specialty that it brings to the habitat. So oak trees being number one. But you can see that the cherries, especially black cherry, the willows and birches, and you can go down the list, they all have are very, very abundant. The most popular or the most common shrub found in many of our woods are blueberries. And look at blueberries have 288 different caterpillars that are associated with blueberries. Some of our perennial plants are the most common. The one that has the most biodiversity associated with it with caterpillars is actually goldenrod, the solidagos. It's a wives' tale that they make you sneeze. Goldenrods just happen to be beautifully yellow at the same time that ragweed and mugwort are blooming. That is probably causing more of your hay fever in the fall than anything else. But you can see asters, sunflowers, and a few others. There is one plant on this list that's not native to Long Island or even to the upper East Coast. That's the morning glories. This plant list was made by Doug Talamay, who's further south. So that plant is native further south, but not here. Doug Talamay is, I'm going to recommend, is a book that you should read. Bringing Nature Home is his first book. He has a new one out, but that Bringing Nature Home is a really good book to kind of give you an idea of what, a little more information. It's a pretty quick read. It's a good book, and it helps you kind of get an understanding of what is opportunities for why use native plants and for what reasons. This other book here, Heather Holm, is her first book was Pollinators. This really gives you a good idea of what plants are host to what insects, and not just caterpillars. So there's a lot more information from there. She's now written 2 other books. One is called Bees, and the next one is called Wasps. So host plants are key. So with that, I just want to go through a few plants. If you really like this Luna moth, it's absolutely stunning moth. You need the walnut family of and hickory and sumac plants. If you don't have those, you don't get this beautiful moth. Painted ladies, the most abundant butterfly found here in Long Island, is usually found on yarrows and pearl everlastings and mallows. The Buckeye, I think my favorite butterfly of Long Island. It's absolutely stunning. It's usually found on the plantains and toadflax, the natives, snapdragons, the native snapdragons like turtleheads, and the false loosestrifes. The hackberry butterfly, if you don't have hackberries, you don't get this butterfly. Some of them are very specific to one species. And one of my favorite sets of butterflies is the little azures, the little blue butterflies. They're the size of your end of your thumb. They are found on a few different plants, but my favorite, the one that is an underutilized shrub, is the New Jersey tea. Bees are really important for our own health. Bees really are needed to pollinate and produce our fruit and veg. So even if you're vegetarian, we really need to have bees produce that food for you, and our native bees do a much better job than any of our non-native bees, like honeybees. Honeybees are from Europe. They're found in the boxes. They're great for farm fields. They're not very good for all those other fruits and veg that we really need. And I tell you the truth, a bumblebee does 10 times more work than any honeybee. And they are very unique. They really are found on a variety of plants. They eat a number of different things, but their primary focus is to go after nectar and pollen. And so what they do, there's a bunch of ground nesting bees, like mining bees, like the one on the bottom right, or the big bumblebees. They all produce these little hollows. These hollows look like very large ant holes. And what they do is they drill down, they create their little nesting boxes underneath. What they do is they go out and collect pollen and nectar. They use the nectar for themselves, and then they create a pollen ball, which is pollen and nectar. They bring they go down to the bottom. They make this pollen ball. They lay an egg on that pollen ball, and the pollen ball, and then the egg develops into a pupa, eats that pollen ball, and gets to a point where they then come back out and start all over that cycle. However, there's a whole bunch of bees that need to have cavities. So you can use that box in the upper left corner. It works for a while, but with a new disease that's out there that is causing problems, we really suggest that if you're going to do this box, use it for a couple of years, then replace all of the materials that are used in that box. And because what happens is there's a colony collapse disease that has been formed by the honeybees and has now moved into the colonial bees and cavity nesting bees found on our native populations. So anyway, the cavity nesting bees. They do the same thing. They make a pollen ball, but what they do is they go into a hollow stem of your grass or plants, perennial plants. They go into the stem. They build in that pollen ball, plant their eggs, and backfill it. Put a piece of wax down and do it again and again and again. And so you get this whole group of bees that come out of that tube of that stock of your plants later in the season, or they go into, like, carpenter bees go into old wood. So, and then the one here in the bottom right is a mason bee. There's 160 different kinds of bees on Long Island, and most people only know bumblebee and honeybee. And there's 160 different different kinds. Many of them are very small, the size of the end of your little pinky, and the sweat bees and the nomad bees and some of these, and they're found going into the stems of our plants. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit. I'm gonna do this quick, and then I'll take questions. The town of North Hempstead is currently going after a rebate pilot program. They did it last year and was very successful. And so Megan is looking to get another grant for this year to offer to homeowners, one per household, up to a $350 grant to replace lawn or existing garden space into native gardens or rain gardens. Funding it will be limited. We're hoping to get this grant soon. It will be a first come, first served basis. And you can visit the website, or Megan already put her contact information into the chat room. Reach out to her and ask to be ready, that once it is available, that she can send you the information. Do you want to add anything to that, Megan, or did I hit all the main points?
No, that sounds good. I can also email anyone who registered for this webinar when we get more details. Probably won't know until mid-April or so. So just keep a lookout, but I should be able to email everyone that registered if you're interested. So someone said, yes, please email us. We'll do. Okay.
All right. Okay, so questions.
All right. So there was one that was from before that we missed. So someone wanted to know about a no-mow lawn solution on an acre if they remove wild rhododendron.
So the wild rhododendron is a native plant, so I prefer to keep those if they're the native wild rhododendron, the big guys. But if you're trying to use a no-mow grass, you can put it in by seed. And so what you're going to end up doing is loosening that soil. You need to have sun to partial shade. You can't go full shade, and then you're gonna seed it in and grow it like lawn grass in that respect. So if that's a no-mow mix or low-mow grass mix that you'd like to do, that's something that you can do. Personally, I love the shrubs, so that's my own personal opinion. So
someone wants to know if there's a monarch butterfly club on Long Island. I'm not aware of any, and I would like to join one if there is. If you know of any, please let me know.
I know that there's a lady in the Port Washington area that raises monarchs and then does monarch releases all the time in the fall. And I cannot remember her name off the top of my head, but I think you could probably find it in a Google search, look for monarch release, and she's on the Port Washington Peninsula. So she collects monarchs, raises them, protects them, because there's a lot of things that go after them when they're little, and does these really cool releases late in the season.
There's also, if you want to be involved with research on monarchs, you can participate in the Monarch Larva Monitoring Project. I think it's run out of the University of Wisconsin. I actually do it at Clark Botanic Garden for the town every year. It's a really fun thing to do, to be involved in research and see what's going on with the monarchs, either on your milkweed plants in your property, or if you can find a park maybe nearby to do it at as well, I could put the information in the chat about that too.
And you can, and then the last thing with monarchs, you can also register if you have the right combination of native plants. You can actually be designated as a monarch way station too, meaning it's a place for them to come hang out on your property while they're moving up north or down south, depending on which way they're migrating.
I'll take a couple more questions now, and then in the interest of time, I think you should just continue, and then we can do the rest at the end. Are there any smaller native trees? I'm assuming maybe they mean smaller than oak trees, because you were talking about how important oak trees are.
Yeah. So my ornamental size trees, those are the shorter trees, kind of like a crepe myrtle size. My favorite of all time is the Amelanchier serviceberry. I have to come up with a common name. Sorry, serviceberry. My parents called it Juneberry. Why I love that plant is that it has white flowers early in the spring. It has red berries in June. That is the tastiest fruit you'll ever eat in your life if you can beat the birds to it. The birds love them. Not one piece of fruit will end up falling on the ground. There's no way. The birds eat them too fast. And then it has this amazing fall red color. And then it's structurally like a vase, and so it's a structural plant and looks amazing in the wintertime. So I kind of consider it a 4-season plant. The native hawthorn is a short sized tree that works very well. The elderberry is another one, is a very tall shrub or a short tree, and elderberry is very useful for medicinal uses and food. It's one of my favorites for its fragrance and use. If you have a little wet area, spice bush would be really good, which is again a really tall shrub or a short tree. Pagoda dogwood is a shade-loving plant that is again tall shrub, short tree. So those are the quick ones off the top of my head, and there's a list that's probably another 10, 12 species long.
I will say that I have serviceberry, and I love it for the exact reasons. The berries are really good. And I also have spicebush, and I got a spicebush swallowtail caterpillar on mine. There might have been more, but they could have gotten eaten. I don't know. But they're really beautiful caterpillars, and I was so excited because that's why I got them, to get the caterpillars, and it was really exciting to get one last year. So
they look like snakeheads. They're kind of cool looking.
Yeah, they're really cool. All right, I'll let you keep going, and then we could take more questions at the end, because we're getting to 7:30 in 10 minutes. So
okay, sounds good. Places to buy plants. The Long Island Natives is a good place that you can get in. It's in Eastport. It's a ways away. And Warner's Nursery, Vicky Bustamante. So this is that time to take a picture, is another good one. A little closer is Decker's Nursery. It's in East Northport. And then there's and so those are the ones that are a little closer. There's a couple others that are there's one in Nassau County now. I don't know where he's going to be located for this year. It's called, excuse me, Drop Seed Natives. Drop Seed is one word, so DROPSEED Natives. Drop Seed's actually a native plant, so that's why he's named his company this way. And he's on the South Shore in Nassau County, but I don't know where he's going to be selling this year. I think he's trying to find a better location than he had last year. And his name is Anthony Marinello. He's good at those plants. And Megan, what is Kim's last name?
remember? I don't remember.
So there's it's on the tip of my tongue. So there's another lady, I cannot remember her name. She's also found online. What was that?
Simmen, S-I-M-M-E-N.
Yep, that's right. S-I-M-M-E-N. So Kim Simmen, she has native plants, and you can usually just Google her name, you'll find her. So those are places. They're the Oyster Bay Audubon Society will have a plant sale coming up this spring, And Rewild, which I'll talk about in 1 second, will have a plant sale coming up this spring. In fact, I think their plant orders out right now. But the last thing I want to add is LINPI, Long Island Native Plant Initiative, is a group that I am the president of. We get all of our plants are true Long Island ecotype plants. We collect from the wild, we grow and then protect the genetics of Long Island plants. And we're trying to have a spring sale. We'll absolutely have a fall sale, but come this spring and through the year, you can reach out to us on the linpi.org web email and ask what is available, and you can buy by appointment throughout the season. What I do recommend is none of these places are easy to go and browse like a normal nursery other than Decker's. Everyone else is, I would recommend that you reach out to them on their emails, find out what they have, order ahead of time, and place your order so that when you go to pick up, you drive up, you pull up, you open up your trunk, they load your car, you pay them what you expect to pay, you know what you're getting already, and you go, and you're going to save yourself some headaches of buying too many plants or spending more money than you wish. But then more importantly, it's really good that you have it planned out and know exactly what you're going to get so that you have things blooming throughout the season. And then Rewild is rewild@longisland.org, and you can see the email on top. They're on the Port Washington Peninsula, and their whole goal is to convert lawns to natives. And so they have a great group on Facebook as well as their email, and you can find out more and more information about that. A couple other Facebook groups that are great information. The Northport Native Garden Initiative and the Long Island Native Garden Group are both on Facebook. You can join their Facebook pages and you will be shocked at the amount of information that you're going to get from people that have been doing it a long time or experts that run the program that works very well. The last thing, this is way out east, but there's a new group that started called 2/3 for the Birds, and they're really trying to get everyone to convert up to 66% of their land, their lawn in their yards into native plants. So it's a great program. So now the rest of this way, I have pictures. I'm going to show you pretty pictures of gardens that are wild and woolly, like the one here. This is a more prairie garden. It is a super block surrounded by a neighborhood, and all of the plants here were planted by a seed. This is one of my favorites in that this was my daughter's school when she was in the 3rd grade. And what we did is this area, and by the way, she's 26 now, so this is a long time ago. We converted this area of lawn into a native garden. What we did is we didn't even kill the grass. We just mulched over the top. What I recommend, if you want to do this for your yard, get cardboard. Go to Costco in the late afternoon. You can get free cardboard that is thinner and fit and is exactly 3 foot by 4 foot, so 12 square feet of cardboard. It's the piece of cardboard that's in between the pallets on their shelves, and they just throw it out. So they love when somebody comes and takes it for free and walks it away, and they don't have to get rid of it and use up their space. So take it, borrow it, put it down, then throw 2 to 3 inches of mulch over the top. Don't even bother killing your grass or tilling it up or raking it out. It's just so much easier. So just bury it, smother it, and then wait 2 weeks and then plant right through it. So what we did is, in this case, we put down 3-4 inches of mulch, and then we planted. Of course, when I work with kids, it always rains. I don't know why. But what we did is, there's no design because the kids weren't going to follow it anyway. What we did is we gave each child a 6-pack of plants, a trowel, and they brought their rulers out and they stabbed the ground, made the hole, planted it green side up. Most important piece of the information, make sure you know how to plant plants green side up and plant the plants. push the soil back, put the mulch back, and then plant the next one a foot to 18 inches away. This is what it looked like 1 year later by those students. Most of these plants are, this was in Minnesota, so most of these plants are found here. This lavender plant in the bottom right is called Monarda fistulosa, or bee balm. These yellow plants are black-eyed Susans. The long purple ones, this is pale purple coneflower, but purple coneflower works. These dark purple ones here in the middle is an agastache, which is a hyssop. The magenta flowers in the back are either Joe Pye weed or marsh milkweed. There's a little both there. The dark purple one in the far right corner is ironweed. These tall yellow ones are yellow-headed coneflowers. And the only plant in this entire picture that doesn't grow here on Long Island is this tall yellow plant on the left. This is a native sunflower. This one was great for this site, but wouldn't work for here in Long Island. But all of these plants work. This is 1 year later. You notice that they're all blooming at the same time. Well, that's because we designed it that it blooms when the kids come back to school. Who cares if it blooms in the summer? The kids aren't at school to enjoy it. So we actually planned it that all the plants bloom early in the spring when the kids are getting out of school, and late in the season when everyone's coming back to school. So that's not what I normally do. I normally have things blooming all the way through the season, but this was a kind of a fun way of thinking about it. You don't have to stick to only perennial plants. This is only shrubs. So we planted in the middle red twig dogwood and dwarf bush honeysuckle around the outside. This is because Joe, the maintenance man, didn't know the difference between a pansy and a petunia. So we planted only shrubs because he knew how to, if it wasn't a shrub, he killed it. And so there are no weeds in this garden. It is only shrubs, and he's doing a great job. But here's another one with, again, all the plants in this photo are things that you can find here on Long Island. This little blue stem right here in front. We have, I'm looking, it's a Joe Pye weed. We have some wild bergamot again. We have black-eyed Susans. We have purple coneflowers. Kind of a cute little garden. If you don't have sun, you have all shade. This is an all shade garden. You'll notice that we have, unfortunately, I took this picture right when it wasn't blooming for that couple weeks, but you can see a bunch of ferns. We have these white flowers are a mountain mint. These ones in the front corner are going to be Culver's root. There'll be white flowers in another 2 months. We have some turtle heads that have pink flowers. We have some a native lily called Turk's cap lily that will have orange flowers. And so these, there's all this flowering in here, plus some grasses and sedges. And then we had things that bloomed early in the season. Over here on the left was a wild geranium, and we had a number of other things. So it's just kind of an interesting garden. This one is mostly natives. It's probably 80% native. And most of the things that you see here are native. We have a few things like sedums in here and some irises that are not native, but most everything else is native. Here's another one that's only shrubs. We have a variety of shrubs in this set of gardens, and you can see that it's cool in the fall, it's cool in the spring, and we have things that bloom in the summer, but it's really cool in the fall. And you can still have a design with if you're using native plants that are structural. So you all know where this is. You've already read the sign target. And why did you read the sign of target? Because the plants are pointing at the sign. So all the plants are in rows looking at the sign. So no matter where you are, the plants point at the sign. And when you get there, your eye just automatically goes up the rows. This was right after planting, so they're small, but you can see that they're when they got fully grown, you can't see the mulch. Everything is fully thick, similar to this picture. Would you rather sit at the car wash here with all these native plants and all those beautiful, pollinators hanging around than sitting on, you know, a sterile piece of ground or sitting on asphalt. And one of the things that I've noticed is once you start going down this native plant route, you just can't help by getting a few more and a few more and a few more. So this gentleman, we built this garden right here. And then after we got that done, he built the rest of his yard so that there's only a little piece of lawn grass in the front of his yard, and there's native plants all the way around him. What he loves to do is sit out here with his chair, let the birds drink out of the water, and watch the bees and the birds hang out around him. And what I have noticed is that when you start planting native plants, you go out there and you weed that one plant, you get your adult beverage, in this case, a Diet Pepsi, and you stand there and admire your handiwork is what happens, because there's no additives. We're not adding water after we get established. We're not adding fertilizer. You never add pesticides. In fact, what happens was, if we need to start thinking that these plants that you've put out there is for really the animals. And if they start nibbling on the leaves and have eaten a few of the leaves, that's a good thing. That means that you have a healthy ecosystem. And as soon as you start trying to kill one pest out of your garden, what you do is you usually create an imbalance. And what happens is these plants, you get more of the insects that you don't want, and not enough of the insects that are really beneficial. So ladybugs are really important because they eat the aphids. If you don't have the spiders and the wasps, you're not going to get rid of the beetles and other things that are really negative in your garden that you want to get rid of. Most wasps, 99% of the wasps, will never sting you. They're interested in specific target species. So for instance, the long black ones with the needle tail, they're called needle wasps. They only eat spiders. You can bat them around and touch them and pet them, and they're not going to sting you because you're not a spider. Or the big monster wasps, they eat that you see in the grass sometimes, they're going after cicadas. And again, they only eat cicadas. And again, as long as you don't step on them, they're not going to bother you. And if you ever see one get a cicada, it's the most interesting 20 minutes of your life of seeing them sting them, drag them back to their nest, pull them down, and the darn thing is 3 times bigger than they are. It's very, very interesting. So what I'm saying is start to enjoy the landscape that's around you. So I will stop and answer questions. While we're answering questions, I'm going to keep showing cool pictures of projects. Like this one was a picture taken in November, and that you can see that they still look interesting when all the greenery is starting to back down and it's going into that fall winter look.
Great, thanks, Rusty. I know it's a little over time, so if anyone has to leave, we are going to be recording this part of the workshop, so you can always go. It'll be posted on the sustainability page, the same page that you went to register for this, and then you can go and watch whatever parts you missed. So let me start with, someone asked if sumac plant is the plant for sumac spice.
Oh, I don't know.
I know it has the berries, so they probably make the spice out of the berries, right?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes, but I don't know that for a fact. That's the first time I've been stumped in quite some time for a question. So that kudos to whoever asked that question. That's the first thing. And I'm going to look it up, by the way. I don't know that answer for a fact. I have a feeling the answer is yes, but I will not promise that that is the case. Sumac has pretty darn amazing plant here on Long Island, and it's underutilized in my opinion, because it's the best fall color. The berries make this are utilized by the birds late into the season, and it's just kind of a fun plant. So anyway.
Great.
By the way, this picture is right in Muttontown. This is the Nassau Soil and Water Conservation District. This is right by their office. And this is what it looked like in the fall that same year. Anyway, keep going.
Are there any specific plants to put in for cavity nesting bees?
Yeah, any of the hollow stem plants. So the goldenrods, the native mallows, hibiscus, the native perennial hibiscus, all the grasses, any of those plants that have a hard, solid stem that's hollow in the fall. And in fact, what I would recommend is we need to also start thinking about not cutting back our gardens in the fall. Leave the gardens up through the winter. So my garden in my backyard currently is the plants are not alive, they're brown, but they're still standing, and the frost still hangs on them, the snow hangs on them. They still have other winter interests that I like. Most importantly, there's a ton of great insects inside those stems, not just the bees. And then in the spring, when everything starts to grow, green up, I wait until I have 2 weeks of 50-degree days in a row where it's just consistently 50 degrees, which will be in a couple months, yeah, or not a couple months, in a month or so, and we'll have that temperature. Then I might cut back my plants. That gives all those insects in the stems to have an opportunity to come out, but I don't cut it back to the ground. I cut it between 8 and 24 inches variable height so that those insects continue to have a chance to leave and find their way into my gardens for the season.
Great, thank you. Someone wants to know if you help homeowners to create a rain garden.
I do. So I will put into the chat in a second, or Megan, can you put into the chat my contact information?
Yes.
You can reach me at my office. It's rschmidt@nelsonpope.com. And you can reach out to me if that's something that you're interested in, and I can help. I will say here for this picture, not everything's native. Most of the plants are native. There are some hostas and peonies in there, but the lawn grass accents this garden. So I'm going to tell you, it's a cue of care, letting people know that this is something that's done on purpose. And don't you want to go down this path and see what's around the corner? It is that design that really encourages you to explore.
Next is, they want to know about, I'm assuming about the rebate program, if it was offered in town of Hempstead. No, unfortunately, it's only offered in town of North Hempstead. It's a North Hempstead program for North Hempstead residents only, if we have it. I'm not promising anything. I'm hopeful though. Someone wants to know if Kentucky bluegrass is native.
No. That was quick and easy. No, it's unfortunately not. The only native lawn grass is red fescue, and it's not. It's a very good fescue. It's a good plant for grass. It's actually tougher and will handle the conditions here in Long Island, and will likely not need any water, unlike Kentucky bluegrass that you need to water to keep green.
Is it worth replacing old growth boxwoods with native shrubs? Birds live in ours in the winter.
Yeah, so I doubt that they're living in there, but they probably are utilizing it, looking for insects. Yes, my replacement for boxwood, the plant that looks almost identical to boxwood but is native is called inkberry, Ilex glabra. It is inkberry. It has an evergreen. It's similar size. There are short ones and tall ones. The berries were used for ink, hence the name. The birds will eat them, the berries as well. And so it's a host plant for a number of caterpillars. So it's a pretty cool plant, and will fill in that space pretty quickly.
Great. Someone asked, and I can answer this one, is Clark Gardens a good resource to learn more about native plants? Yes, we have, when Rusty knows, he helped us build a rain garden there that has all native plants in it. And there's also a big pollinator garden that has native plants in it. So
There it is.
come down in the spring, in the summer, and you can, get some ideas for your landscape from what we have growing there.
That's it right there. That's the picture of it on the bottom right when we got it planted, and the other two pictures are a year and 2 years later.
Right on cue. Good job.
Hey, Megan, maybe
Yeah.
you want to talk about this one. I think you might
I
have a
wonder
little
whose house
knowledge
that
about
is.
this yard.
Do you have a picture of it more recently? Because it looks so much better now.
No, I don't. This is, unfortunately, this was 2019, but look
Yeah,
how much it
this is
changed
my
in
house,
1
and I
year.
replaced my front lawn with all natives, and yeah, I guess it was 2019 or 2018. No, 2019.
19.
Feels like
It
so
was,
long ago.
yeah.
And it actually it filled pretty filled in the fall, but it's a few years later now, so it's really filled in now, and it really looks amazing. So I wish I had if you were at the sustainable yard care one, I showed you a picture of it, and that was more recently. So I love it.
I have more recent pictures, just not in this presentation. But what I wanted to show and why I show it is, look at how small the plants were planted in spring of 2019, and look how full it was by the fall of 2019. 1 season, that's all it took.
Yep, exactly. And I actually I had boxwoods, if you could see in the back, and I removed them and put in some native shrubs. I put in some bayberry and mountain laurels, and I like them so much more. Okay, so what is the fastest growing shade tree to replace a Norway maple?
My favorite for that speed for a shade, and if you're really trying to get a real dark shade, and it's underutilized, is the American basswood, Tilia americana. It's has leaves that are the size of small plates. It shades really quickly, and it grows faster than a Norway maple, which is pretty darn fast. So that's my favorite for that. However, other good looking shade trees, and it's also sometimes known as the honey tree, because it produces flowers early in the season, and the honeybees find it really early. In fact, I saw my first bee yesterday, full of pollen, going through crocus. So today, so the bees are already out, by the way. So anyway, other shade trees that I would recommend, hackberry is not fast growing, but faster than an oak tree and produces great shade. Elm, American elm, is another great shade tree. Please look for the disease resistant ones like Princeton elm. It's a cultivar of the American elm, or a whole bunch of others like that. And then that's it. And of course our native maple, either sugar or red maple, depending on what kind of soils you have.
Great, thank you. Is there any local place that can test our soil? I know of Cornell Cooperative Extension in East Meadow. I don't know if there's any other local ones.
That's the best one. So look online. They give you instructions on how much soil you need to collect and how to collect it and how to store it, and then bring it to them. And for a small fee, they'll test it. And I don't remember the cost of the test. I think it's like $20 or $25, something like that. But don't hold me to that. I'm trying to remember.
Okay. Hold on, I'm just putting your thing in the chat. So I put Rusty's email in the chat for everyone.
Okay.
Let's see. Are there native plants that can grow under pine trees?
Yes, the pitch pine forests of Long Island. The main plant that grows under there is in the heath family, which are blueberries and huckleberries. So there's a low bush blueberry and a huckleberry that are knee high or less in height. There's a high bush blueberry that can get taller, 5-6 feet, but you need water, so it needs to have moisture. So moist areas that are more consistently wet. Also found under there would be things like sweet fern, Comptonia perennia. So that would be it doesn't have a lot of flowers, but it's absolutely the best smelling plant around. So Comptonia or sweet fern. A native regular normal, it's more of a shrub than a fern. By sweet fern's more of a shrub than a fern. It's just got that fern name. But a normal fern would be bracken fern, would be found under there. Also, there are orchids. If you are lucky enough to have one, there's a number of orchids that are found in those kinds of woods as well. And that's a rare and endangered species. So if you get lucky, that's great. Wintergreen is a ground cover. It's a perennial evergreen that's found on the ground. There's a couple different varieties. Again, they're on the threatened and endangered list because they're exploitable, but they're actually easy to find and can usually get them from different nurseries. Let's see. Canada Mayflower, wild geranium are a couple others. So there's quite a few. One of my favorites is black cohash. It's a perennial that puts out white flowers. So those are some of a variety of things. The list can be 4 to 6 times longer.
Great, thanks. Someone wants to know if they can use layers of newspaper instead of cardboard. I'm guessing for smothering lawn.
Yep, absolutely. But you need to have quite a thickness. So cardboard is better because it lasts longer and it tends to be a little bit more sturdy. If you go with just newspaper, you're going to want it to be fairly thick, 1/2 inch to 1 inch thick. So it's quite a bit of newspaper. You're going to need a lot more newspaper than you're going to need for cardboard. Okay. And by the way, you can also smother with a tarp and kill the grass, leave the tarp down. It's called solarization. So you burn out the grass and then pull the tarp back and then put down the mulch and plant. But you need the tarp on there for a month to 2 months, depending on the time of year.
So someone wants to know about if any of the plants are a problem for dogs, if they're potentially poisonous.
There are a number of native plants that can be poisonous for dogs, but I have almost all of them in my yard, and I have 4 dogs. My dogs never, they kind of know what they can eat and what they can't eat. And most time what they do eat is grass. They don't tend to eat any of my other plants. So now I'm not going to say that that's the way you should think. It's just how I think. And I foster dogs. I have new dogs coming in all the time. And we had 15 dogs in the last 2 years that have come into the house and left the house. So over COVID. So yeah, we have new dogs coming in all the time. So that's my personal opinion. The landscape architecture opinion is you can look up every plant and find out if they're poisonous to humans or dogs or any horses or goats or anything else that you may have, chickens, whatever it may be. And so I would recommend, if that's something that you're very concerned about, is to look at what the rules or what the recommendations are that you can find on a Google search.
What are good plants for hummingbirds, and when will they be migrating here?
Hummingbirds, I have a lot of plants in my yard for hummingbirds. They will be late April, I think. They're usually one of the last ones to migrate back. And it's mainly because they can't get that cold at night. They go into a form of torpor or like a, being going into a, hibernation at night, not quite all the way to that state, but they really take it, it's called torpor in the evenings. What is really cool is that they need a lot of nectar. And so red cardinal flower, Lobelia cardinalis is one of the best ones. Trumpet vine, native vine that has these red flowers, also in the tubes, are really good. My favorite one is penstemon, any of the penstemons. Penstemon digitalis is my favorite, but there's a number of them. In fact, I have a lot of pictures of hummingbirds coming to my penstemon. So those are a few. You can look around and find others that are on the list, but really it's the tubular flowers. The longer the tube, the more likely they have a higher nectar source, and the more likely you'll have hummingbirds come to it. And it's not just red. So penstemon is white flowers. It doesn't need to be. One more favorite is wild columbine. Comes up early in the spring and has them coming to those as well.
Okay. Will you have a talk on designing a native garden? The town does not have anything scheduled like that as of now. I don't know if you have anything coming up that you'd want to plug that's specifically about designing the garden.
Not coming soon. I tend to have a couple every year, but I don't have one coming soon. One of the things that Rewild has in the Rewild program, they have some of my standard designs that are beneficial. So you can grab one of those designs, and it's kind of a standard design for a small garden, whether it's sun, shade, shrub, or flowers. They have a variety of standard designs that I created for them. And I
actually have those designs and a whole document that details how to go about creating a native plant garden that we created for the Rebate program last year. And I put the link in the chat. So if you're interested, there's a native plant list. So you can go on that and look up information, just click on the links and you'll get information about, each plant's growing requirements. And then there's a whole document that details how to create gardens. And there's also those designs that Rusty was talking about as well. There's links to those. So if anyone's interested in that. So can you talk a little bit about some choices for ground covers?
Yeah, so some of the shady ground covers, those are the harder ones. Some of my favorites are foam flower. It puts up white flowers in the spring, stays low to the ground. It's almost evergreen. It's an evergreen, but they're kind of brownish in the winter. They're not quite vibrant green. Pachyra golden ragwort, I think, is the common name. It's an unfortunate name for a very cool plant. It's Pachyra, P-A-C-K-E-R-I-A. No, P-A-C-K-E-R-I-A. Yeah, that's right. Pachyra is a good, a cool plant that works again in those conditions. Sunny condition, my favorite is bearberry. It's an evergreen ground cover. It makes a really thick layer, has dark red berries late in the fall. It needs 3-4 hours of sun or more late in the day, or 3 or 4 hours or 5 or 6 hours early in the morning, and it will do great. One of my favorites that nobody seems to use is strawberry. The native strawberries are some of my favorite ground covers. One, you get the berry, but it has white flowers and it spreads really easily, and you can control it. So the little trailing vines go out, you can move them around and get them to grow in the direction that you want them to go. let's see, those are the first bunch. That wintergreen that I mentioned earlier is an evergreen in full shade. Canada Mayflower is an evergreen in full shade. Pennsylvania sedge is can handle most shade to full shade, and it's more grass-like, like a really short liriope. Let's see.
I will say
There's
I
a
have,
number of wild geraniums that are short and put out great flowers. You were saying something?
yeah, I have the moss phlox or creeping phlox subulata, which is a good
I
one.
can't believe I forgot that one. Yep.
It spreads
That's-
really fast, so if you want something to cover something really quickly, I have it planted completely in that little strip of that normally people have lawn in right next to the street, and it looks really beautiful when it flowers in spring.
I have somebody was talking about pictures of garden designs. I really like some of these simple garden designs of large numbers of a few flowers than going crazy. So this is actually the highline that was created by Pate Odoff. And Pate has these beautiful Monet-like landscapes. But yes, so creeping phlox is a really good one, and I'm using it more and more in that space between the sidewalk and the street.
How close to the house can you plant ornamental trees like Juneberry or pagoda dogwood?
I would so look at how wide they get. So like the serviceberry or the Juneberry wants to get around 12, 15 feet wide. So I would try to lean to planting it 6, 7 feet from the house, where that pagoda dogwood only wants to get somewhere around 8 to 10 feet wide. So I may go a little closer, maybe 4 or 5 feet from the house, but I tend to try to go further from the house than closer. You remember that plant that I'd said at the very beginning that is got 15-foot deep roots? And I said it's on the high line. Here it is. That's lead plant in full bloom.
We have that planted at Ritter's Park in New Hyde Park.
There you go.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting looking foliage and flowers.
Mm-hmm.
Someone asked, how about wild ginger? I'm not really sure what that was referring to, but it's a good shade ground covery plant.
Yep, wild ginger is a great shade loving ground cover. That's another one of the favorites. There's a lot more than you think. And another one that's kind of a vine like that either you love it or you hate it is Virginia creeper. It's kind of a replacement to the English ivy. I personally love it, but not everyone does. So
when should you put the cardboard or other paper on to smother grass and weeds?
Whenever you want. You can do it now if you wish. You can wait. You can put it down in the fall and plant in the spring. You can do it now and plant in April. You just need a couple weeks between when you put it down until you are ready to plant. If you have a large area, and I'm thinking like more than you want to do with going to get lots of cardboard from Costco, is there's a company called Uline. It does packing supplies, and you can get a roll of cardboard. It literally comes in a roll, 250 feet long and 3 or 4 or 6 feet wide. I tend to do the 3 or 4 because it's easier to move around and handle. And I covered a half an acre with 20 rolls of it and rolled it out and put down mulch over the top and then planted through it. And it works really, really well. It only works if you're getting a lot of space, but it works really, really well.
I think someone had one more question about or comment. They said that they got their soil tested at, I think, Governor's Island. They had some kind of special tool that they used, some kind of gun that's valued at $20,000, which is interesting. And they wanted to know if Cornell Cooperative tests their soil as extensively as that.
No idea.
Yeah,
Sorry.
We're not really sure what that means, all the details.
Well,
of
I
that,
don't,
so.
yeah, I don't know how they test the soil. I know they do test the soil. I'm not sure how they do it. I know how I did it in Minnesota, but that's different. And we were really looking to see how much nitrogen, phosphorus, and things were in the soils, and so that we could decide, is this a good spot for lawn grass? Is this a good spot for blueberries? Is this a good spot for different kinds of plants? And so we could be very specific, but that's Minnesota, not here. I'm not sure how they do it.
Okay, I think that's all the questions. I don't know if you wanted to show anything else, Rusty, or if we should wrap up.
I'm just showing pictures, so I'm totally
Okay,
willing
you
to
can
wrap
continue
up.
showing pictures while I close everything out.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for everyone for being with us tonight, especially those who stuck around for this part, the extra part of the presentation. A big thanks to Rusty for this amazing presentation and everything you do to increase native plant use across Long Island. I hope everyone was able to learn a lot about native plants, and hopefully you're inspired to use them in your landscapes now that spring is right around the corner. I do want to remind everyone that if you're interested in learning about rain gardens and creating them, Rusty is going to be teaching a workshop on that for the town on March 29th at 6:30 p.m. on Zoom. The same, if you want to register, it's the same place that you registered for this workshop, northhempsteadny.gov/workshops. Again, thank you, and everyone have a great evening.
Thank you. Have a good night.